Hello gentlemen, and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about goal setting and journaling to some degree. Now there are 4 areas in which one is going to want to set goals, and these will of course correlate with the type of journal you want to keep. These are your physical, moral, intellectual, and spiritual needs, or areas, I guess would be a better way to put it. So let's look at these one by one and some example goals of what you might want to set. So we'll start with physical. I think this is the most baseline. This is what every single men's self-help goes into. Physical is obviously your physical, how your body is, being healthy, being strong, having the right physique. Now this is probably the easiest to set for goals for. You look at yourself, you say, can I running a mile? This is a great baseline. Can I run a mile? Yes. Can I run 5 miles? No. Well, work towards that. Can I run a mile? No. Well, work towards that. You could also do things like pull-ups. How are your pull-ups? Can you do a pull-up? No. Work towards that. If yes, find something else. Find some physical sort of challenge for yourself. I think the Army fitness test, I believe is what it's called, is a great example. These include push-ups, sit-ups, a run, and you can train for these things in different ways. And then the journaling end of this is keeping track of your daily progress towards this. So for example, let's say you set a goal for yourself, and every day, let's say the goal is you want to do 50 push-ups. You right now can do 10 every day, at morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, or just twice a day, you do those 10 push-ups. And then at the end of 3 days, you increase it, right? You do 10, then you do 11, then you do 12, then you do 13, you just work, and you keep that down in your journal. You can have this little box here, and in that box, you can have push-ups. Say you have another goal for yourself. You're like, I want to run a mile, right? You want to be able to run that mile. So the first day, you walk most of it, right? You do, and this is more, I think, more efficient than, just running as far as you can every day. You walk, and then you run, and you alternate this, right? And you work towards getting that full mile as a run, right? Let's say you have to walk, you do 5 minutes walking, 1 minute running, 5 minutes walking, 1 minute, until you get to the mile. You can also do this with 20 minutes. This is another way you can do it. You start with 20 minutes, you run for a minute, you walk for 2. You run for a minute, you walk for 2. And this sort of setup helps you, and you just slowly decrease the walking increments here until you can run the full distance. So that's your physical out of the way, and you keep those in the box, right? Like the increments or whatever it may be in this little box in one corner of your journal. This is just one way you can do it. And let's say your last goal is to be able to make a 10-minute plank, and then you just keep track of how long you're doing the plank every day, and that's your little physical box up there. Now we're going to move on to the moral. This is sort of, I think, the most difficult area to keep goals, right? What is a moral goal exactly? How do you fulfill your moral goals? Now, the moral part is really about being a better person, right? So one way I'd say to really fulfill a moral goal is at the end of each day, ask yourself, do this sort of examination of yourself. In the Catholic faith, we call this an examination of conscience. And you just, every night, you're like, okay, where did I screw up, right? You examine, you could just do this for a week. And then you write down what your mistakes were. You write down your biggest mistakes, and you look at those, and you're like, okay, these are the mistakes I keep making. And then you take those mistakes, which are sort of let's say you have a really bad propensity to lie, right? This is a great example. You're like, okay, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday, I lied a lot. This is a problem. And so then the next week, you work on this issue of lying. You just keep this in the forefront of your mind. And then every day you don't lie, you're like, good job, right? You put the little check down in your journal. I didn't lie. And if you did lie, you don't give yourself that, and you just keep working on this until you can get a full week without lying, right? And you keep the lying checkbox, but then you examine yourself more while you're going for this checkbox. You don't try to address any of your other issues. You notice though, over the time you're lying, you also have an issue where let's say you're yelling at your parents. If you're a younger person, right? You're always yelling at your parents. And you're like, well, this is a really big issue, right? Because it is a big issue. It's not a good thing to do to yell at your parents. And so what you do then is after you've done the week of lying, or once you can get a complete week of just not lying, or 7 days without lying, you go, okay, I've done that, and you keep checking off those lying boxes so as not to slip back in that bad habit, and you start incorporating the next thing. You're like, okay, Well, now I need to work on not yelling to at my parents. Now this is the method, right? And you add a thing each week. And how you get this is let's say you start with the thing that you think is serious enough that you need to address, but not too serious that's a character flaw that you cannot overcome at the beginning. Because if you start off with your most difficult to overcome character flaw at the beginning of this journaling, goal setting routine, you are going to fail. That's just the truth of it. You need to build this muscle of a moral compass, this muscle of virtue. So that's your morality set, and you can do this in a lot of different ways. This is just how I would recommend it, right? Your examination of conscience. But that's just taking out what's bad in your life, right? So the other thing you have to do is you say, how do I add good attributes to myself, right? The virtues which aren't just not eating too much or not lying, but rather the positive virtues. And you see these virtues that you want to build, and you cultivate those for a week, every day, right? You say, and one way I found to do this is really good. This was recommended. This general idea comes from the president of my college. I think he's a great guy. He gets a lot of good ideas. It's based off a challenge he does once a year for the guys. I'm obviously simplifying it a bit to make it easier because it's not this challenge right now. This is just to improve yourself. So one thing you could do is just be like, hey, I'm going to do one good thing every day. Really easy, right? At the beginning of the day, you say, I'm going to do this good thing. Premeditate good thing. And this gets you in this mindset of wanting to do a good thing for somebody else, right? You're like, and this shouldn't be something that's your obligation, right? Like, smiling at somebody or opening the door. This should be something like going out of your way to do someone else's task, right? Let's say your brother, if you're younger, left your dishes in the sink, and you're like, okay, well, there's a lot of dishes in your sink. Your mom is stressed. Now, normally it's not your duty, it's not on your list of chores, but you're like, I'm going to go out of my way to do these dishes to alleviate the stress from my mother. That is an example for someone who is younger. Now, when you're older, this could be a spouse. Like, you get home and your wife, right? Your wife hasn't done the dishes. Now, yes, that could be a big issue that maybe you need to talk about, but you could also be like, okay, I'm going to do the dishes. This isn't something you are obligated to do. That's the important thing. Premeditated and non-obligatory. Okay, that's the important part for the morality, the kind action, let's put it that way. The act of charity, that's a better way to put it, your act of charity. So that's the morality part covered. You have examination of conscience, acts of charity. We move on to the intellectual part. Now, this I think is the most difficult part of the entire thing, because how do you improve yourself mentally? There's a couple ways you can go about this. You could go and set yourself and you say, I'm going to read these books, and you find a good book list. I might put out a good book list at some point of books I think men should read. Actually, I will definitely be doing videos or a list about that at some point. But you go for a list of books and you're like, let's say you have trouble reading, right? You say 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, whatever it is, and you find something that you can do, because everybody has a level which they can do, and you start there and you just increase it, similar to the art things. This is the underlying thing here. You start small and you increase. So let's say you can only read for 5 minutes a day. You read for that 5 minutes a day, right? That's a passive intellectualism. You're taking something in. You do that. Good, that's part of it. And then you increase it to 7, and then 10, and then next thing you know, you're reading for 2 hours a day, which might be too much, so maybe don't do that. But you are reading for a large amount of time, to the point where you could read as long as you wanted, and you're reading good stuff. And one thing that's important is take notes while you're reading. This is still a passive thing, because you're not coming up with your own ideas, but take notes on it. Write in your books, as long as they're yours, not the library's. Write in the margins, underline things, have a notebook at the side. I'll talk more about that in a future video, but take notes while reading. And the other part is, at the end of the day, go and journal. Just write about your thoughts in your journal. You have your box where you check off your different exercise things. You have your examination part where you also check off, like, I didn't lie today or whatever. Then down here you have this other box where it's like, okay, now I'm going to keep track of, like, just my thoughts at the end of the day. Anything. Write about anything. These random things that hit you. Write about the conversations you had with somebody. Write about the books you're reading. Anything in that section. Just write about what you're thinking about. Expand your ability to express yourself through writing. 5-10 minutes at the end of your day. That's all it takes, right? That's all it takes. And I've been slacking with this. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've been slacking, and I can feel this in my life. I'm trying to get back into this. Part of that is doing this, because this is one of the things I've said as a goal for myself, is to build this channel in order to help others, while also increasing my own discipline, which, yeah, that was lacking. Just don't look up my upload schedule. I was also in Rome for a while, which is very cool. I have lots of videos planned on that. But this is more of the course thing, so I'm not going to get too into that in this course. Now the last part, that's the spiritual part. Now this is the hard one. How does one improve spiritually? Now, this is unique to every person, right? Obviously. Now, what I would recommend and what I say is this 30 minutes of prayer. Try to get to 30 minutes of prayer as soon as possible. Or build habits of prayer. Now this is what I think is easier. It's to build the habits of prayer, right? Rather than doing 30 minutes of prayer. Because what does that mean, 30 minutes of prayer, right? It doesn't have much meaning. And there's a priest I once listened to who talked about how one Hail Mary said with full attentionness, with full focus, with fullness of yourself given to that Hail Mary is worth 1,000 rosaries said distractedly, which is true. So set yourself to a habit of prayer. Make a decision. Choose your dedication. My personal one that I've been struggling with again is the Angelus. It's a great thing. It's 3 times a day. The reason I've been struggling is during Easter they change it to something else. The Regina Coeli. So I just don't have that memorized, which makes it more difficult to be like, okay, it's noon now, I gotta pray my Regina Coeli, because I don't have it memorized, so I have to be like, okay, now I'm gonna take it out. But the idea is, the Angelus is a great one. I recommend the Angelus, but maybe you just want to pray a rosary every day, or go to Mass every day. Whatever that is, set your goal, and then write that last box, and do like, okay, I've done my Angelus in the morning, I've done in the afternoon, I've done in the evening. Whatever that might be. Obviously, you should also try, maybe have a weekly, and this is another thing, have this weekly thing, and list the things you want to achieve by the end of the week. This is more on the goal setting part of things, right? So you have these daily tasks, right? So you're whatever. And then you have a weekly thing. And this is like, let's say for the physical, it's, well, you know, at the end of the week, I should be able to do, I can only do 10 push-ups now, but at the end of the week, I should be able to do 20. And you just say, was I able to do that? Or for the moral, it's like, I want to not be lying by the end of the week. And you say, did I go a week without lying? Check. And let's say, but this can also be used for, so you could just use it to say, well, yeah, I did everything daily, and that makes you feel better, but you can also use this in another way, and this is the important way. Find things that are necessary to do once a week, and then assign them, and write these in your weekly. So let's say confession, this is a great one, going to Mass on your, that's easy, just put that on Sunday. Or going to confession, or maybe, I don't know, doing your laundry sheets for your bed. That's not a daily thing, obviously. And you write those down there, and then you're like, okay, these are my once a week things, whatever they may be, whatever section they may fall in, and then you assign them to a day. You know, make sure they're done by Saturday. So yeah, my camera shut off. Don't know why that happens. What I was saying is, you have your weekly and your daily things, and you work together with these, and the dailies are micro increments of the weeklies, or the weeklies aren't. Like, the dailies aren't micro increments. It depends on what weekly we're talking about here, but they work as these micro increments, right? Because you can think of building a good habit, and this is what I was trying to say when my camera died. You can think of building a good habit like starting an addiction, right? First it's 1 cigarette, and then you're smoking 10 packs of Camel booze a day. You know, it really is like that. Similarly to that, you start with like 10 push-ups a morning, and the next thing you know, you're doing 100 daily. You know, it is this gradual increase, just like an addiction, because addictions are just bad habits. When at the end of the day, an addiction is a bad habit. And so, likewise, a good habit is built in the same way you would build a bad habit. And that's how it works. And so this has hopefully been helpful to you. I really hope this helps your planning, your goal setting, your journaling. I was thinking maybe try and put a journal on screen, but then I was like, I don't know if that's going to work, because I could give you examples. Maybe I'll link some in the description of how you could format your journal. At the end of the day, it's really mostly about the goal setting, and whatever sort of journal helps you keep track of these goals is the one you should do. Make sure you are keeping that journal daily, because I've been slacking with that. That's been something I've really slacked with, and I can really feel it in my life. So anyways, I hope you all have a great day. I will see you in the next class or installment or whatever you want to call it. I'll see you all next time. Ciao!